Welcome back to the Mid-Year Mitch YouTube channel. In today's episode, I'm lowering the Misfit to the right ride height, so be sure to stick around. So the Misfit is sitting way too high. I've driven it around enough that the suspension should have settled pretty much to where it needs to be, and it's still way too high. You can see on the red car that the tire tucks pretty nice. But on this car, the fender is way higher, so this is about 28 inches from the ground, and this one is about 25 and some change. So this thing needs to come down like 1.5 inches, 2 inches. And it's the same in the back. So in the front, I'm either going to change the coils or I'm just going to cut them down. And I've looked online, it looks like mid-year big block springs are very similar to later C3 springs. So that's why this thing is sitting so high. It has a higher spring rate, so I should be able to cut a full coil off. And hopefully it doesn't have to tuck as much as this car, but as long as it's, you know, closer than that. The back's gonna be a little more straightforward. Like I said, it's still high, but all I'm gonna do is change the rear leaf spring bolts. This is from the trailing arm to the leaf spring. The original ones are 6.5 inches, these ones are 8 inches. So with a longer bolt, I'll be able to let the spring droop more, and that will lower the car's ride height. So I have both of the original style spring bolts out, and you can see there's just a really small threaded end on the bottom because it's set for one ride height. And then here is the new bolt, which is 8 inches versus 6.5. You can see how much more is threaded. So you're able to raise the back of the car up if your spring is drooping, or you're able to lower it because it's, you know, significantly longer. So we'll see. I'm just going to get these guys in. These will be a lot easier to install on the car too. You won't have to compress the spring as much. To compress the spring, I used the ratchet from a ratchet strap, just wrapped it around the spring, and then I put the jack on the hook, and that gave it some traction so it wouldn't just slide to the middle of the car. So I picked it up, then was able to put the nut and all the hardware on the bottom, and I have it pre-adjusted right now to about the width of a nut right now. So that'll be my starting point on both sides. So now I'll put the wheel on, put it down on the ground, make sure that this doesn't hit the wheel, and then let the suspension settle once I move it around a little bit and see if I need to make any more adjustments up or down. So I have the stock 78 coil out of the Misfit, and if we measure it, the free length is about 15.5. So I want to lower the car by pretty much 2 inches. So I watched a video from Eaton Springs, and he said if you want to lower it 2 inches, you measure the spring till you get 1 inch lower, which would be exactly straight down here. So I'll put a cut here. I can't cut on this end. This is like the square end because of the way it's formed right here. Can't do that. They're fairly parallel here. So I should just be able to make one cut here, cut this whole coil off, and we'll put this thing back in the car, and hopefully it'll sit lower, but hopefully it works. If not, I'm buying new coils. So I'm not sure what happened to the film where I was actually putting the coil springs back in the car, but it's been about a month since I filmed it. The car's been aligned, I've driven it around a good bit. So it's definitely settled, and I'm really happy with the way the ride height is. And if you're concerned that I cut the springs in the front, it's okay because they're 78 springs, so they're a little longer. The spring rate's higher. So even though I cut them, I still had to use a spring compressor to get them in. They didn't just fall in. So I mean, there's still plenty of spring rate there. There's no way that the coils are going to bind. You know, it's perfectly fine in the front. Now, if you would cut any more than that, you may run into some issues. And if you would cut a spring that was in the car stock, you may have some issues. But it was kind of a stiffer spring anyways. And you can see in the back, we also have a really good ride height here. So it's definitely very comfortable. The back is nice because that's fully adjustable. The front, I mean, it is where it is. You just kind of have to deal with that. But I'm really happy with the way the car sits. The car runs and drives really nice. It tracks nice and straight, handles really good, goes around corners great. It pretty much feels like a modern car. So I'm really happy with the overall performance of the car. It's definitely well worth putting the stiffer springs in it and cutting them. Mainly it was just for the aesthetics. But that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have any questions on how I installed the coil springs or removed them, I have a separate video on that I'll put the link up above. You can be sure to check that out. I don't think I have a video on the rear spring, but I think I went over that fairly decent. If you guys want another video on that though, I can do a separate video on that as well. But I have a lot of work to do on this car, so I'll catch you guys later.